So recently I was browsing Twitter and I came across this post by a VTuber called Jelly Hoshiumi from FaZe Connect.
Screw it, man. I think pushing politics in my children's sandbox game is disgusting. Especially when it's disguised as education. Let me play my stupid block game without having to engage or associate with any of your stupid political garbage that I literally do not care about.
So at a time when the US government, my government, is trying to undermine the education system to prevent children from learning about crucial parts of our history, like the enslavement of black people and the genocide of indigenous people, a game that's trying to spread some kind of toxic politics to children, that could be a real threat. So to figure out what was going on, I read a bit further.
I am just so tired of seeing it. Why does it even matter to push real-world matters into my block game that I play to escape from the real world? And if I buy and play the game, can it be seen as taking a side because their dumbass stupid post blew up? Stupid people in power moment.
So after reading that, I got even more curious. Taking a side? People in power? What could possibly have gotten Jelly so riled up? What horrifying politics are in this video game that she could be so upset about? Now, with this admittedly obnoxious preamble out of the way, would it shock you to learn that the source of these outraged tweets that, at time of recording, have over 10,000 likes, was a 5-year-old educational DLC for Minecraft that teaches children about historical civil rights movements? So obviously this is fucking ridiculous, right? Someone made a story map for Minecraft that will give literal children an introductory lesson to important historical events. And Jelly says that this, quote, political garbage, read civil rights, is being pushed on her. And, admittedly, it does look like she regularly streams Minecraft as her day job. So, if this DLC is really being forced into her game, it would genuinely affect her life. Now, I haven't played Minecraft seriously in over 10 years, but just as a test, I decided to reinstall it and see just what it takes to play this mod. So, after I signed back into my Microsoft account, I went to the webpage for the mod. It's called Lessons in Good Trouble, and I was able to add it to my account for free. Then the webpage prompted me to open the game, and I will now show you the entire process of opening this mod in Minecraft Bedrock Edition. So the conclusion should be clear, right? There's no possible way that someone could accidentally play this mod. It's not being forced on anyone. In fact, I would call the process of actually getting this world set up unnecessarily complicated for what it is. So there you have it. Jelly is a conservative grifter who peddles in outrage politics. She's intellectually incurious and deeply troubled in a way that makes me genuinely hope that someone in her life is able to pull her out of what seems to be an unhealthy spiral. No adult should be freaking out over an educational mod for Minecraft. And here's where the video could end. But I think it would be hypocritical of me to criticize Jelly for being intellectually incurious if I just stopped here. What is Lessons in Good Trouble really like if it's not propaganda being forced down your throat by Microsoft? We know it's about civil rights, but what does it have to say, and how does it say it? So to answer these questions, I played An educational Minecraft world designed for literal babies, and now I'm going to review it for you. Lessons in Good Trouble opens with you, a school child both in-game and theoretically in real life, preparing for your civics assignment. So you're trying to get to City Hall to write a report or something, but the streets are closed because of a demonstration. So when you arrive, there's a small group of protesters and they're confronting riot police. This area is your tutorial stage, where the game's going to show you how to interact with the world. And it's also where I, a fully grown adult with a college degree, got stuck. I spent an embarrassingly long time stuck in place, looking around, trying to figure out how to progress. And it turns out that you're meant to stare at the fireworks going off in the distance, which are the game's way of directing your gaze around the crowd. Now, I'm not sure if this will be more intuitive to a child than it was to me, but I left this tutorial humbled. So anyways, the riot police start dispersing the peaceful demonstrators, as usual, and a lady in the crowd pulls you out before things get worse. And you end up in a library, which is going to be your home base for this mod. And the lady who pulled you away is named Maya, and she's the librarian. And she talks to you about what happened and calls the demonstrations an example of good trouble, a term used by the black civil rights activist John Lewis. After that, Maya recounts her own experiences participating in the American civil rights movement of the 1960s. Now, before I go further, let me just give a brief aside, because for better or worse, I obviously have my own political positions. And that said, I don't think it's my place to speak from a position of authority on how black people or other oppressed groups around the world should or should not have pursued their own liberation. So as we go through this mod, just be aware that I'm going to try to keep my own positions and thoughts out of my assessment. So anyways, we get an overview of sit-ins and other examples of civil disobedience where black Americans intentionally violated discriminatory rules as a protest tactic. And after that, we follow Maya as she marches alongside John Lewis in Selma, Alabama, before they are blocked and attacked by the police. Now, I was actually surprised at the extent to which this mod was willing to discuss the topic of police brutality. Obviously, there's not actual police violence depicted, but Maya does give graphic details of officers fracturing John Lewis's skull and nearly killing him. And it was definitely way more frank about police violence than I expected, but I think that's a good thing. I think kids need to learn about this kind of stuff. After this opening segment, the rest of the mod opens up to you. There are 4 chapters, and each cover a different historical moment. While the intro is framed around the Black liberation movement in America, the 4 chapters you can read each cover different countries: Pakistan, South Africa, India, and Britain. So I'll go through them in order. The first chapter covers Malala Yousafzai and her activism for girls' education in an area of Pakistan under Pakistani Taliban control, where girls were banned from attending school. The gameplay in this section involves finding 5 girls and taking them to Malala's school. It's simple and easy, and once you take the children to Malala, she asks you to help her rebuild the school. And this is the other gameplay aspect of this mod. So, assumedly as a way to keep the kids engaged, once you finish a section, you're given a plot of land and kind of just set free to build something fun. Now, I didn't realize that was actually the point at this time. I just thought you were meant to fill in the holes in the wall, but I talked to her again and the game didn't seem to care and kicked me back to the library, so fair enough. After each chapter, we get a brief aside to discuss another aspect of the American civil rights movement. So I definitely think that this mod is intended to teach both American and world history, but it's definitely for an American audience. Although I do think that children in other countries could play it and have a good time. I'm not sure if they would get the same experience as like an American kid. The second chapter covers the anti-apartheid struggle in South Africa. It opens again with a brief summary of the movement, and then it plops you down into the world, and your objective this time is to tear down pro-apartheid posters around the town. Now, this stage is somehow another one where I show off my MLG gamer skills. So first you can see me walk straight into the police officer's line of sight, failing the level instantly. And then, on the second attempt, I somehow missed this poster at the very start, and it takes an embarrassingly long time for me to find it. I do get there in the end, though, and after this section you do more building and then get yeeted back to the library. In the intermission, Maya talks about Rosa Parks, who famously protested discriminatory bus laws. What I found interesting was that Maya explains that Rosa wasn't just someone riding the bus. She was an activist, and we actually learn about another march that she participated in. And I feel like children are often left with the impression that Rosa Parks' protest was just like a spur-of-the-moment thing, not an organized act of civil disobedience. So the fact that they actually provide context that she was an activist is actually pretty refreshing. I liked it. The third chapter covers Gandhi's resistance to British-occupied India, and I think if there is anything that the kids playing this will already know about, it's going to be this section. But it's still an important historical moment, so fair enough. We get another summary, and our gameplay this time consists of giving Gandhi water while he's on hunger strike, while distracting the guards. I have to say that the gameplay for this section was very boring. It takes a long time, there's a lot of waiting involved, and it was not the most engaging. But it was kind of fun to think that this game is having kids engage in acts of vandalism to fuck with colonial cops. Like, that's pretty cool. We get another building section, and after the boredom of giving Gandhi water 5 times, I wanted some excitement. So I decided to test whether the game would let me set off TNT. It didn't, but in the process of finding that out, I learned that you can actually break through the world and fall through the bottom. So that was fun. After flying back up and getting a fun bird's eye look at the map, I did go back to the library and continued on with the game. We get another intermission, and this time it pays tribute to John Lewis, who passed away in 2020, pretty recently. I actually think that this game might have been made in tribute to him, but I'm not 100% sure. But then we move on to the final chapter of women's suffrage in Britain. So we're introduced to Emmeline Pankhurst, who's organizing the suffragette movement to fight for the women's right to vote. And so the gameplay in this section consists of passing out flyers to passersby. And somehow, this is the third time that I've actually struggled with this game. I couldn't find the last person to pass my flyer to, and I ended up walking around for a long time before I stumbled across them. It was pretty bad. But after that, we do get another building section, and then we finally get a wrap-up with Maya. She talks about the importance of nonviolent resistance, how it's sometimes good to be a troublemaker if it's for the right reasons, and then we get a nice message about how today's activists are inheriting the legacies of all these historic figures. And I thought that was a good message at the end of it. So, what do we think about Lessons in Good Trouble? I think it's actually vitally important that children learn the value of protest and civil disobedience. There's a lot wrong with my country, but one of the things that I value most about it is our freedom of speech. Of course, the right to free speech has never been applied fairly to everyone, and even in this mod, we see how cops are always eager to escalate peaceful demonstrations into violent crackdowns. But I think that's another thing that kids need to learn, that rights aren't a given, they're not free. People paid in blood for every right that we now enjoy, and if we aren't willing to carry on their struggle, not only will we never gain more, but we could easily forfeit those rights we currently have. So, is this game perfect? No. There were a few spelling mistakes, and I think the gameplay was really dull. But it also just took 30 minutes to play, and I can see how it could act as a springboard for teachers to introduce larger lessons about these and other historical events. So, I think as a teaching tool, I can see it being useful. I'm not a teacher, but if you are, have at it if you think it will be useful to you. I rate Lessons in Good Trouble good enough out of 10. And as unlikely as this is, I really hope that one day Jelly plays it. Maybe she could learn something too.